Welcome everyone to another episode of Learning the Falsehoods. Today we are going to discuss about uh, how exactly this camaraderie of convenience between the moderates in the Congress and the Muslim League. Okay, how was this a pivoting point in the political history of Bharat? What ramifications did it have during that time? And what similar repercussions will it have in future that we still to this very day are reeling from or reeling under? Okay. So far we have covered that Mohandas Gandhi, he has entered the politics. All right. Um, he was of the moderate persuasion, partly because he had a mentor that was Gopal Krishna Gokhale. He himself was a self-proclaimed moderate. Um, but also he had been working in South Africa against apartheid and racism. All right, so it's pretty much aware what the British were capable of. So it would not be a stretch of imagination to say that Gandhi had witnessed firsthand what the British were capable of, and hence he was being very cautious. Some might say extremely cautious to the point of being paranoid that if you let loose the revolutionary spirit, if you completely adopt this sense of utter and absolute sovereignty, you might end up declaring a full scale war on the British. And since he had witnessed it firsthand, he had certain apprehensions in his mind that would we, the natives of Bharat, would we be able to successfully withstand and overcome the wrath of the British. Okay, but like I said, personalities from the past history, all you can do is simply analyze them. You cannot sit in judgment about what he did was right or what he did was wrong. What you can do is you can simply just analyze their actions and appeal to your own sense of reason. Okay, what repercussions did the actions of Gandhi have on the contemporary politics of Bharat? Okay, so today the incident that we are going to discuss, or rather incidences that we are going to discuss, to this very day, they have impact on the current polity of Bharat. All right. So, like we have already covered this, okay, the Christian colonizers had overtaken Turkey, the seat of the Caliphate of Islam. They were going to, redistribute all these places amongst the Christian nations such as Italy, France, and all those things. Um Now, this did not go down well. The Muslims. They have this concept of Jazirat ul Arab, meaning their places of worship inside the Arab Peninsula. Okay, the place where Islam as a faith originated. Okay, so they have certain places of worship over there. Now, since the British and all the other Christian colonizers had successfully defeated the Islamic countries, and now they were talking about how to distribute the spoils of the war. Okay, yeah, that would be an insensitive way to put it, but since now they were the conquerors, a decision had to be made. How exactly do we distribute these countries? Okay, so there were some secret treaties, some peace treaties, and all the negotiations were going on. So, in a sense, it triggered this fear inside the Muslims that our places of worship cannot, our places of worship, they cannot be controlled by somebody who is a non-Muslim. All right. So, hence, this created a necessity for the Muslim League to seek an alliance with the moderates in Congress. Keep in mind, again, moderates were the undercover agents of the British. The Congress Party and the Congress Party in general and the moderates in particular had nothing to do with the majority of the pagans who resided in Bharat. Okay, up to this point, that is up until 1919, there has been no deliberate attempt to seek the mass opinion, okay, or opinions of the masses. All we are functioning right now under the assumption that it was the moderates and the Congress, by that extension, that was the mouthpiece of the majority of the pagans. Okay, Quite contrary to that, Congress has always claimed that they are a secular party. They have nothing to do with the pagans. Again, something for you to think about. How does all of this make sense to you? That again depends on your sense of reason. To start off this video, I'm going to read. Okay, I'm going to read a report. Okay, this was a report given by Kempsford to Montague, okay, from Lord to the Viceroy. Okay, these were the people who were entrusted with executing the British will, or the will of the Westminster Parliament. Okay, so these were, in a sense, workers of the Parliament of Westminster, working at the behest of the Crown. Okay, now this was one of the reports, and I'm reading from that report. This is not me paraphrasing or coming up with an explanation. All right. So let's see what that report had to say. The Muslim feeling in India and also on the frontier is much disturbed over prospect of dismemberment of Turkish Empire. There is no doubt. This feeling is most marked with regard to the holy places, but is also strong regarding Constantinople as the seat of the caliphate and the capital of the last great Islamic power. Failure to voice her views would exacerbate feelings already sore. Okay, like we have mentioned, the locus of identity for the Muslims is rooted in West Asia, okay, more specifically in Mecca and all those places. Wherever a Muslim person resides, okay, for them, the law of the land takes a back seat, okay, and their divine commandments are the first ones that they are willing to follow, even at the cost of their lives. Okay, I don't have to prove this because there are multiple interviews, multiple sources out there on the internet that you would see. Okay, for them, the law of the land takes a back seat, and their divine commandments are the supreme ones whenever there is a conflict between them. Otherwise, they don't have a problem with following laws of the land. And on top of that, if you see, just a rejoinder to that, if you look at the current politics of most of the West European countries, okay, after the conclusion of both the world wars and after all the Arab Springs and all the crises, okay, they had opened their borders large-hearted as a gesture of large-heartedness. They had opened their borders to migrants, majorly from the Muslim countries, and now they are reeling under the after effects. Okay, that is again content for some other video. So yes, in that specific context in the contemporary world, you would see that the law of the land, the culture, the tradition of the land does not matter to them. Okay. So this is again Lord who is writing to a viceroy. He is voicing his concern about that there is this brewing discontent among the Muslims in Bharat. Okay. So they had kept in mind that eventually we will have to consider this possibility that there is going to be an uprising. Okay, because the affinity to violence for the Muslims is quite higher. They are very volatile in that sense. Okay, so yes, in the meanwhile, what was going on? Okay, now let's focus on this camaraderie of convenience that Mohandas Gandhi and the Muslim League were indulged in. All right, now that they were joined at the hip. Okay. Now, as I have mentioned in my previous videos, Mohandas Gandhi, he himself was a very shrewd politician. Okay, we make this mistake, and sometimes we deliberately make this mistake of calling him a freedom fighter. Okay, we have proved this in our previous videos as well. Things for which he is given credit, okay, was not really his brainchild. Okay, such as non-cooperation, civil disobedience. All he did was, the dish was all ready and cooked. Okay, all he came was garnished it from the top and then served it. All right, I don't know whether that is a metaphor in the English language or not, but it conveys the message. Okay, all the cooking and all the everything right from chopping the vegetables and preparing the dish, everything else was done majorly by the nationalists. All he came was, he simply just served the dish, garnished it, and yeah, presented it to the masses. That is again a discussion for some separate video. What happened right now was there was one specific individual who goes by the name of Maulana Abdul Bari. Okay, Maulana Abdul Bari and Gandhi, those two individuals had some matching frequency when it came to politics. Okay, those two had reached out to each other, or so that is what is said. There is no means for us to specifically determine who reached out first, but it is assumed that both reached out to each other. Okay, Maulana Abdul Bari, and they were the ones who were hammering out the contours of the Khilafat movement. Okay, again, to refresh your memory, Khilafat movement was something that uh, you know was largely for the benefit of the Muslims or the Muslim League. Okay, what was the potential benefit that the pagans, let me correct myself, not the pagans, what was the potential benefit that the moderates were deriving out of this camaraderie of convenience? Okay, simply furthering their political gains and solidifying their position as a mouthpiece of entire Bharat, whereas clearly they weren't. Okay, so if you see what exactly was Muslim League gaining out of it, furtherance of their religious cause combined with their political cause. What was the Congress, and through that extension, what was the moderates gaining out of it? Okay, furthering their own political interests at the cost of the interests of the pagans. Okay, who were not sufficiently represented through moderates. Okay, moderates, simply they were elites and the people who had leisure time and resources to participate in the in the parliamentary and the political process at that time. So clearly the moderates, they were fighting for a power struggle, whereas the Muslim League, they were fighting for political and religious cause. Okay, so yes, what did this fellow Maulana Abdul Bari and Gandhi? Okay, now they had combined forces. Through this, what was the potential advantage that Mohandas Gandhi stood to gain? Okay, he secured his legitimacy amongst the Muslims. Okay, because uh, Gandhi, being a shrewd politician, he had realized, okay, here you had a community of people in front of you who were largely politically conscious and politically active, in contrast to the pagans. Okay, so if Gandhi had to legitimize his reputation as being a national leader or a national politician, okay, he must start with the Muslim League, and through that, appeasing the Muslims, getting the Muslim votes. What did he need that? Whom did he need that for? Like, who was required for Gandhi to further that aspiration of him? A leader from their community who would endorse the claims of Gandhi as being Muslim friendly. Okay, and that role was played by this Maulana Abdul Bari. Okay, so there is widespread documented evidence out there that you can look it up on the internet. What this did was, majority of the Muslim masses, they were mobilized behind the cause of Gandhi. Okay, majority of the Muslim League workers, Muslim League leaders, okay, they were convinced that Gandhi indeed was fighting for their cause, and they mobilized the crowds, okay, for Gandhi's cause. What was Gandhi's cause? Non-cooperation movement. Against what? Rowlatt Acts. Rowlatt Act was what? A black act, meaning any person, okay, who was found to be guilty by the authorities, they can simply just arrest and execute them. There was no need of a public trial. The trials would take place inside closed doors. Okay, judgments would be passed, and no need for evidence, no need for proving his guilt beyond doubt. So all this was connected. So now that he had secured large scale support of the Muslims, okay, they had mobilized them. All right, so there was this brewing discontent majorly from the Muslim side, because it were the pagans. Okay, they were operating under the assumptions that since there are moderates who are looking out for their interests, they need not participate. Okay, I would say Here, I'm not drawing out the faults of the Muslim side. What I'm saying is they were politically active, they were politically conscious, whereas the pagans, they, you know, put their blanket trust into the moderates who were clearly, clearly indulged in a political struggle, not a national struggle. All right. So yes, again, let's read a telegram that that Kemsford writes to Montague. That is, Lord writes to Viceroy. In background of all this, keep in mind there were large masses, large Muslim masses who had rallied behind Gandhi at his call of non-cooperation. Why? Because non-cooperation was now merged with the Khilafat issue. What was the Khilafat issue? Fighting for Turkey. What did Turkey have to do with pagans of Bharat? Again, an appeal to your reason. Think about it, reason it out, rational it out inside your mind. What exactly had the pagans got to do with Turkey? If the answer is in the negative, okay, then again consider my theory of then why exactly did moderates, support the Muslim League in furthering the Khilafat cause? So this, lends proof to the argument that moderates were indulged in a political struggle, not the freedom struggle. Okay, now let's read a telegram again that Kemsford writes to Montague. The Lord writes to the Viceroy. This telegram was dated 1919, 18th of May 1919. Okay. The Muslim feeling is already deeply stirred. If the fate of Turkey approximates to worst anticipations, we warn you results may be very grave. Already, Hindu intrigue has successfully exploited Muslim soreness, and results are to be seen in Punjab, Calcutta, and Bombay disorders. Now we have war on the frontier waged by the Muslim kingdom and proclaimed by Amir as jihad. Spectacle of Turkey's completely dismembered by Christian powers may conceivably make Muslims turn to Amir as waging jihad on behalf of Islam. A Mohammedan religious rising is contingency not to be ruled out of account. Okay, now again you need to get some of the background over here. Afghanistan had divorced itself from the British Empire. Okay, it's not as simple as it sounds. We'll cover this not in this series, but we'll cover this topic of how did Afghanistan manage to divorce itself from the British Empire. That is a separate story, but right now you need to keep in mind in 1990 and 1920 Afghanistan was a separate kingdom from the British Empire. They had signed a treaty in Missouri, they had a conference in Missouri. All that we'll discuss in some other video, but for your information right now, keep in mind that Afghanistan was a separate kingdom. Okay, how is this going to play out in this equation? Okay, that we'll discuss in the further part, but in this telegram that the Lord writes to the Viceroy, he is clearly saying it. Okay, there is seething discontent amongst the Muslims of Bharat, and you could see he is writing that a religious rising from the Muslim is a contingency, you cannot rule it out. Okay, keep in mind, there was a clear sense of mistrust between the Muslims and the British. So they could not depend on them when it came to securing their political rights. Okay, what was the Muslim policy of the early 1800s? That you would use British, okay, to protect your rights just in case the pagans, not really pagans, just in case the moderates managed to secure more political power. But now that mistrust, what had that mistrust done? That mistrust had drove the Muslims to the pagan side. So now that they had switched sides, okay, now again they cannot go back to the British, claiming that we are back and we need your trust back. Because clearly now the change or the switch that they had made was irreversible. Okay, so they went to the pagan side. But again, what if they had seen it, that there was a clear rift between the Congress members as well, that there was clear divergence of views between the moderates and the nationalists. Okay, so they also cannot depend wholeheartedly and completely on the moderates or the Congress. So they needed a clear fail-safe, meaning something on which they could depend regardless of whether the British supports them or the Congress supports them. That we'll discuss. All right. Now, just to divert, okay, in a sense, what was Khilafat movement doing? Khilafat movement was simply doing that return of Turkey to the Caliphate of Islam. Okay, that was the position of the Muslim League, and by that extension, the Muslims of Bharat. That was their position. Okay. Now, what was the position of the natives of Turkey, where this caliphate was situated? Okay. In June 1919, in Turkey, there was a movement that was called Young Turks Movement or Turkish National Movement, that had started under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Pasha. He was, fondly known as Kemal Ataturk. All right. Now, what were they advocating after the First World War? After the victory of the Christian nations over these Muslim nations, after the peace treaties, Paris peace treaties, and League of Nations, what exactly did they need? Were they themselves advocating returning Turkey to the old rule or the Islamic rule? No. What were they advocating? The Turkish national movement, they were advocating return to democracy and the principles of democracy. They themselves weren't advocating it. Okay. Now juxtapose both the positions. The natives of Turkey are advocating that no, we want democracy. We don't want return to the rule of Islam or the rule of Ottoman. Again, compare that with the positions of the Muslims of Bharat and the Muslim League. They wanted that let's go back to the rule of the Ottoman and let's go back to the rule of the Caliphate. Okay. Now you will see manifestations of this mentality in the current life or in the contemporary era as well. Okay. Whereas the countries of West Asia, where Islam itself originated, okay, they themselves are advocating shift away from the fundamentalist and all those medieval policies that their faith seems to have. So they are moving away from them. They are going more towards the side of liberalism. Whereas the more you travel from West Asia to the frontiers of Bharat, you will see that the more you travel towards the frontier of Bharat, the more you are going closer towards the radical and the fundamentalist ideas. So how do you explain this anomaly? If the region where Islam itself originated, if they are going towards the liberal side, why exactly are you going opposite to them? You'll see this. Okay, they themselves are liberalizing their policies about women, liberalizing their policies about all the other things. Okay, they don't want to go back to the era of the medieval ages. Then why exactly are the people in this part of the subcontinent, they hell bent on going back? Because it serves certain political interests. It serves certain political interests of the elite classes. But more about that in the other videos on this channel. Right now we are going to focus on like I said, the Turks themselves were advocating democracy, whereas the Muslims in Bharat, they were advocating return of Turkey to the Ottoman rule. So you see this anomaly. Okay. Now what happened was, now the differences in the approach and the differences in the outlook of Gandhi and Maulana Abdul Bari were coming to the fore. Because what was happening was, non-cooperation wasn't really yielding any results. Okay, it had come out, like we have mentioned in our previous videos, after Germany signed a secret treaty with Russia. Germany revealed some of the details that the countries of Western Europe, they are going to sign, and they were going to pass off the Islamic countries that they had won as spheres of influence. They were going to distribute it as, the spoils of the war. And this was out in the public domain. They were aware of all these things. And on top of that, Gandhi's principles of non-violence weren't yielding any results. So there was clearly frustration building up amongst the Muslims. Okay. What came to the fore was increasingly, day by day, since they were not seeing any results. Okay. the Muslims under the stewardship of, there was also another bodies. Continuously taking the name of Muslim League, but there were also other bodies such as Jamiyat Ulema Hind and all these bodies. Okay, they were religious bodies, and their membership, some of them had memberships more than Muslim League as well. Okay, now all these political bodies, they were growing impatient because at the end of the day they were taking diktats from a non-Muslim, that was Gandhi. All right. Now, I would really say some credit has to be given to Mohandas Gandhi for containing that violent streak that the Muslims have with regards to, when they grow frustrated and their political needs or political demands are not met. Okay. Now, since it was Gandhi who was leading the stewardship of this, this convenient marriage of non-cooperation and the Khilafat movement, he was a staunch advocate of non-violence. And since it wasn't yielding any result, okay, the frustration was growing amongst the Muslims, and it was growing up unto the point that, the dam was going to burst. Okay, there is only a limit to which somebody can, be patient. And that goes for all human beings, not just Muslims. Okay. Then came out these ideas because they had theological, justifications for using violence. Okay. They had these ideas, the Deobandi seminaries, the Barelvis, the Deobandis, the Wahhabist ideologies. We have already, initially established this continuum of thought, right from Dehlavi up until Sayyid Ahmad Khan and all the other people as well. Okay, there was this continuum of thought, and they advocated that when there is no vindication of your stand or no vindication of your rights, okay, violence in the form of jihad is justified as long as it furthers religious cause. Okay. Now, I would like to think that Gandhi himself was aware of this, but yeah, let's just keep it at that. Otherwise, it might be controversial again, but, you can do your own due diligence. Find out from other historical sources why exactly was Gandhi so hell-bent on, believing that Muslims indeed can adhere to the principle of non-violence. Okay, again, an appeal to your reason. Find out from the internet, look at multiple sources, and you will find out the truth. It's no different from, what most of the people prior to me have already said. Okay, so now, there were other political organizations that were coming up. They were not happy, and inevitably what was going to happen was they were going to take violent measures, and hence Gandhi would have to stop non-cooperation and his satyagraha. Okay, there were some skirmishes, there were some incidents of violence that were coming up, and non-cooperation had to be stopped. Okay, now one might think that since non-cooperation would stop, the violence would also stop. Okay, but this further exacerbated the frustration that the Muslims already had, because so far they had not seen any results, okay, through non-cooperation or through this non-violent method of satyagraha that Mohandas advocated. Okay, now here is the Muslim League's position on those matters. Okay, Ajmal Khan was the person who was the president of the Muslim League session that was held in December 1919, and this is an excerpt from his presidential speech that I'm going to read out right now. Okay, the Muslims know that the right to hold a mandate in any of the lands previously under the Ottoman rule primarily belongs to Turkey, because the people inhabiting these lands are predominantly Muslim in faith, and no non-Muslim power can under any pretext have the right to hold sway over them. The Muslims cannot be expected to forget that these lands have been the cradle of Islam, where the holy places are situated and where no non-Muslims can ever have semblance of mandatory or any other rule. Trampling upon Muslim sentiments in this respect would mean creating not transitory but perennial unrest in the entire Muslim world, which would otherwise mean the deliberate awakening of unfriendly feelings in an otherwise unobtrusive people. Okay, here he is implicitly conveying that message that if you are going to go ahead, if the rumors that were doing round during that time, if indeed they were true, that you were going to distribute all these territories as spheres of influence among the Christian nations, then that would mean that it would be deliberate awakening of unfriendly feelings. All right. This is Ajmal Khan, the president of the Muslim League, saying in 1919. These are not my words. Okay. Now, inevitably, what did this do? Okay, we started off this video by saying that there was this camaraderie of convenience between the moderates and the Muslim League. What did this do? It gave the Muslim leaders a peek into the minds of the leaders of the moderates and their approach. Okay, they had picked upon this idea of impotency of the moderates. Okay, because what they saw was, since Gandhi was advocating non-violence, and they were not willing to take action. Okay, they were not willing to take aggressive action. The Muslim League had picked upon this fact, and they had realized that moderates could be pushed further, because now that they were in the bed together, okay, they were together, they had learnt from each other's methods and each other's ways. The moderates had realized that these people were the extremists in the sense that they advocate aggressive actions, whereas the Muslim League members had realized that the moderates are simply just smooth talkers. They don't mean anything. They'll simply keep talking, and they'll keep using these constitutional methods, which inevitably wouldn't yield anything. Okay, keep in mind, up until this point, the majority of the pagans, they are still not represented. Okay, this is just a conversation going on between two political stakeholders at that time. Both of them were indulged in political struggle. Okay. So yes, they were under, like I've mentioned, they were under this false pretense that the methods that were outlined by Gandhi, Mohandas Gandhi, would yield anything. Much to their surprise, not largely surprise, they had already knew that these things wouldn't yield any results, and they were not very surprised when Gandhi recalled the non-cooperation and the Satyagraha movement at that time. Okay, let's bring back the argument about Afghanistan at that time. In the earlier part of this video, we had read in one of the reports that the Lord wrote to the Viceroy that there was a possibility that they would ask the Afghan army. Okay, now this was an option that was available to the Muslims at that time. Okay, now this option was on the table, meaning they had already come so far away from the British, meaning after the mistrust and all, they were in the bed with the pagans. Okay, and now that they were in the bed with the pagans, they knew everything. They had seen things very clearly. They had seen the reluctance that the pagans had, not exactly pagans, the reluctance that the moderates had towards violence. Okay, so this opened up the door to call in the Afghan army. Remember, Afghan was an independent kingdom at that time. So this opened up that option, and now this option was clearly visible to them. The option that they will exercise right after 1947, when they illegally, with the help of the tribal people, illegally occupy the areas of J&K, that today we like to call them as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. But we have not reached that point so far in the history. We will reach it. But yes, now that option was clearly visible to them. Okay. Now what it did was, there is a principle of hijrat amongst the Muslims. Meaning, if there is a holy war going on there, that is, if there is a jihad going on there to further the interests of Islam, you are obligated to go over there and participate. This is what is hijrat. Hajj is when you go for a religious pilgrimage. Hijrat is when you go to fight in the war and contribute to the call of jihad. Okay, so there are also documented evidences of people going to Afghanistan to fight the British, for the Khilafat movement. Again, this was a clear divergence from Gandhi's policy of non-violence. And from this point forwards, like I said, Now, I'm not accusing Gandhi of, purposefully and deliberately, awakening this monster, this Frankenstein monster that was the Muslim League. But now that they had clearly seen that the moderates, under no condition, condone violence, okay, it had opened up some new doors for them. Okay, this we'll see during the partition. All right. So yes, they had closely seen, and they had realized that under no condition they would go ahead with the call of violence and adopt aggressive measures. And this is something that will play to the detriment of the pagans who were not represented through moderates, whereas the moderates who were clearly making concessions to the Muslims. Okay. So yes, that clearly shows what were the dynamics, what were the contents of this camaraderie of convenience that both these parties had. Okay, that's it for this episode of Unlearning the Falsehoods. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.